By October of 1980, just months after the original Friday the 13th was released and took the world by storm, filming for a sequel was already underway. Paramount greenlit the sequel immediately when the original made nearly $60 million at the worldwide box office on just a $550,000 budget. The problem? Sean Cunningham, director of the original, and Victor Miller, writer of the original, had absolutely zero interest in returning for a sequel with Jason Voorhees as the killer. They would only return if the franchise moved forward as an anthology series, each installment a different story revolving around the Friday the 13th superstitious day. While this concept was briefly considered, with the slasher boom of the late 70s, early 80s underway, the potential money in continuing the story of Jason Voorhees and Camp Crystal Lake was too much for Paramount to pass up, and they decided to move forward with the sequel starring Jason as the killer. With that decision, Cunningham and Miller were out the door. Steve Miner, a longtime friend of Cunningham, who was the assistant director and associate producer on the original, took over directing duties. Ron Kurz, who also worked on the original film, was hired to pen the script. Tom Savini, the special effects legend responsible for the great practical effects of the original film, was also at the door, as he too strongly disagreed with the decision to make Jason the killer. Stan Winston, a special effects legend in his own right, initially replaced Savini before having to drop out of the film due to other projects. Carl Fullerton would eventually take over the special effects on the film. Hello YouTube, this is Let's Talk Horror, and welcome back to another video. Today, I will be reviewing Friday the 13th Part 2. When it comes to the situation I just laid out, with three major players that made the original Friday the 13th a smashing success leaving because of significant creative differences over the future of the franchise, that was a major red flag that this sequel was on its way to being a train wreck that would kill the franchise. Or shall I say, it should have been. And for almost every other slasher franchise and movie franchise in general, it would have been. But the truth is, despite all the behind-the-scenes turmoil, and all the major players behind the original wanting nothing to do with the sequel because they were so displeased by the direction it was heading, Friday the 13th Part 2 is seemingly considered to be better than the original by the majority of hardcore fans of the franchise. I also fall into this camp. For as much as I defend and enjoy the original more than most seem to, I do enjoy Part 2 more and consider it the better film. Now, let's get into the reasons why. In my opinion, Friday the 13th Part 2 does everything that the original did well. It has a similarly effective atmosphere, does a great job of adding to the lore, has great kills and practical effects, and of course the Harry Manfredini score is just as iconic. However, what sets Part 2 apart from the original is the characters. This aspect of the movie is a huge improvement over the 1980 film. It starts with Ginny, who in my opinion is the best final girl in the franchise. Amy Steele does a great job with the material she's given, and Ginny as a character is everything you want in a final girl. Early in the film, we see her charmingly clumsy, playful, sassy, and funny side. Then, later on in the bar, we see her nurturing, understanding, and sympathetic side.
And the only person that ever knew him was his mother. Never went to school, so he never had any friends. I mean, she was everything to him.
Yeah, deranged killer.
No. You're missing my whole point. I mean, I doubt Jason would have even known the meaning of death. Or at least until that horrible night. He must have seen the whole thing happen. He must have seen his mother get killed. And all just because she loved him. I mean, isn't that what her revenge was all about? Her sense of loss, her rage at what she thought happened, her love for him. Bizarre, isn't it? And he must be out there right now crying for a return, for resurrection. What do you think?
I think you're drunk.
This all leads to a showdown with Jason, where we see how much of a smart and resourceful fighter she is. Her sweater scene in Jason's shack is one of my favorite scenes in the entire franchise.
Jason. You've done your job well, and Mommy is pleased. That's a good boy.
I also enjoy the relationship and chemistry between her character and Paul. The campfire speech is the standout scene for Paul as a character. He's shown as a leader who isn't afraid to bend the rules and have fun every once in a while. The other characters are good, too. Jeff and Sandra are a much more fun and interesting version of the horny couple trope, as is Ted as the funny guy, and Howie is one of the only side characters to come into Crystal Lake and get out alive is both hilarious and notable. Mark is an extremely likable character who, even though he's been dealt some unfortunate cards in life, has a great attitude and is determined to walk again. Scott has his moments as the group perv, and the flirtation between him and Terry is fun. Overall, I'd say that these characters are some of the most entertaining characters in the entire franchise. Obviously, a big aspect of Part 2's legacy is the fact that it introduced and established adult Jason as the killer. While it was a major step for the franchise, this isn't the version of Jason that fans would come to know and love. Personally, while this is not my favorite Jason by any means, much like with Pamela Voorhees, I think I've grown to appreciate this Jason more than others seem to. The sackhead and overalls look is creepy in its own right, even if the sackhead part is kind of ripped off from The Town That Dreaded Sundown. The unmasked look of Jason during the jump scare at the end of the movie is iconic. Plus, no matter what, this Jason was able to finish the job that his mother couldn't by killing off Alice at the beginning of the film. He also killed off one of the most recognizable characters in the franchise, Crazy Ralph. One of my favorite parts about this Jason, though, is that we really get to explore the psychology of the character in ways that the franchise doesn't attempt again until the 2009 reboot. It's made clear that this Jason is driven entirely by satisfying his mother. Even though she is gone, Pamela is the sole motivation for this Jason. She was his whole world, and he stays at Crystal Lake and kills because it's her voice in his head telling him to kill anyone who comes into his stomping grounds. While this aspect of the character never completely goes away, watching later sequels, it's easy to forget how important Jason's relationship to his mother is to the character. In Part 3 and 4, that part of Jason is glorified window dressing for his character. By Part 5 and pretty much until the 2009 reboot, that part of the character is almost a complete afterthought. I'm not saying each sequel needed to harp on and hammer the audience over the head with the Jason-Pamela relationship, but it would have been nice if it remained a noticeable part of the Jason character in later sequels of the franchise. However, that's what I love about this version of the Jason character. Psychologically, this feels like the most pure portrayal of the character. Even though Tom Savini left after the original due to displeasure with the direction they were taking the sequel, the practical effects hold up very well in Part 2. Special effects artist Carl Fullerton did an excellent job replacing Savini on the film. The look of Unmasked Jason at the end of the film was Fullerton's creation, and it looks absolutely phenomenal. As for the kills, we get some great ones that are less gore-heavy, but still on par with what the original had to offer. The kills to Alice and the officer rely more on the acting ability and facial expressions than gore. However, the kill of Mark is arguably the standout kill of the movie, and one of the most brutal kills in the entire franchise. The spear double kill with Jeff and Sandra is also iconic, although after seeing the uncut version of it, it's sad to see how much didn't make it to the final film. Still, what we got was one of the best early kills of the franchise. My final positive of the film is that I find the climax and final battle between Ginny and Jason to be far superior to the final battle between Alice and Pamela in the original. There is less to be frustrated about with this one, and we get a better mix of slow, suspenseful moments, like with Ginny trying to get away in her vehicle or hiding under the bed from Jason, and moments where Ginny really has to be a fighter, like with the chainsaw scene. Plus, we get one of my favorite scenes in the entire franchise, where Ginny puts on the sweater to try and fool a Jason. The whole sequence really shows us how smart and resourceful Ginny is, and effectively explores Jason's psychology, which, as I said earlier, I love. We even get a cameo from the legendary Betsy Palmer.
Mommy
has a reward for you.
Jason, Mother is talking to you!
Jason, Mother is talking to you.
Outside of all of that, the scene is just dripping with creepy atmosphere, and as I said earlier, the shrine to Pamela is one of my favorite set pieces in the entire franchise, with how gruesome, creepy, and unnerving it is. But as much as I do enjoy this film, there are some negatives that I do have to address. First of all, I would have strongly preferred that they just make Jason supernatural from the beginning. I've always found that the explanation that he somehow survived the drowning in 1957, only to live in the woods for literal decades, to be ridiculous and stupid. Apparently, nobody involved, including his own mother, wondered about the lack of a body recovered. On Jason's end, he made zero attempt to return to his own mother. See, this is why the whole explanation this movie gives about Jason is ludicrous, and while I can forgive it for the most part, as I said before, I would have preferred the supernatural zombie explanation that gets introduced in the later films in the franchise. You could have had Jason as a zombie and still explore his psychology and relationship with his mother in this film. My other negative is a little bit more nitpicky, but while the ending jump scare is cool for giving us the first look at unmasked adult Jason, I find the jump scare as a whole to be less effective than the original. Don't get me wrong, it was still effective, but after seeing the original, it's pretty easy to see coming. But overall, despite a couple of flaws, to me, Friday the 13th Part 2 is one of the few slasher sequels that surpasses the original. It still has everything that the 1980 film did so well, while also greatly improving in a few key areas. Even without the version of Jason that would go on to become so iconic, Part 2 is one of the better installments in this franchise. I'm going to give Friday the 13th Part 2 an 8.5 out of 10. But that's it for today's video, folks. Comment below and let me know your thoughts on Friday the 13th Part 2. Do you love it like I do? Or are you one of the rare people who thinks this is a step down from the original? No matter where you stand on the film, I'd love for you to share your thoughts on it. I'll talk to you in the next video. Take care.